Welcome to Facts TV News, where everything is true. 300 trained teachers recruited to work temporarily in early childhood institutions. Minister of Education and Youth Favor Williams says 300 trained teachers have been recruited to provide temporary service in early childhood institutions. She was speaking during the launch at the Early Childhood Commission's ECC virtual launch declaring 2022 the year of early childhood development. According to Mrs. Williams, the recruitment will aid in meeting the requirements of the pupil-teacher ratio.
In the area of recruitment, 300 temporary trained teachers were recruited to provide support in early childhood institutions, meeting the teacher-pupil ratio, ensuring the proper supervision of the children as required by the Early Childhood Act and regulations. The ECC also maintains 74 parent places, and these are aimed at providing continuous support to parents, increased support to parents to assist their children in navigating the online space. A significant number of parents attend seminars in the online space, and I'm happy to hear that. And we continue to train parents on basic computing skills, and this will continue throughout this year as well. It's an early childhood parenting program to prevent violence against children by caregivers. It's a 10-week program which began September 2021 and ended November 26, 2021. And IRI Home Toolbox is a World Bank pilot program. Again, these are things that will go out into the field during this year of early childhood.
$5 billion spent on devices for teacher students since 2020. Principal Director of ICT at the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, Cadian Smith-Newton, says the government has spent more than $5 billion on procuring devices for teachers and students from 2020 to 2021. Mrs. Newton-Smith explained that the ministry has fulfilled its mandate that was set from the onset of the pandemic in 2020.
Thus far, through the work of the Universal Service Fund, eLearning Jamaica Limited and other agencies, we have procured and distributed more than 80,000 devices valued at approximately $5 billion to path students and teachers over the period 2020 and 2021. That's a wonderful effort. In the minister's sectoral presentation last year, he announced that the procurement and distribution of these devices would be a priority for the ministry. And of course, he has delivered along with our partners here today. Ladies and gentlemen, today's handover is a testament of the government of Jamaica's commitment to building a brighter future for the children of Jamaica through the furtherance of their learning capacity and potential. But of course, this is just the beginning, as approximately 55,000 devices, inclusive of laptops and tablets, will be provided to students and teachers island-wide through the Tablets in Schools, Tablets for Teachers Phase 2, and Tablets for Students under the Serve Jamaica Digital Transformation Projects, 3 projects. As a ministry, we wish to laud the efforts of eLearning Jamaica, the Universal Service Fund, and of course, our logistics partner, the Jamaica Post, who have remained dedicated and consistent in the procuring and delivery of high-quality, let's repeat that, high-quality devices to those within our society who need them the most.
Agriculture Minister plans to pitch temporary suspension of duties on chicken leg quarters. Agriculture Minister Pernell Charles Jr. says he expected to meet with major poultry producers in the country shortly on the temporary suspension of duties regarding the importation of leg quarters. The minister announced several measures being considered to reduce the impact of rising commodity prices on producers of poultry.
I think the first step is now to have, some formal discussions. We've had some informal discussions, but to have some formal discussions with the broiler companies and other stakeholders, or to continue those discussions and to see where we are. I mean, what we're discussing in terms of the potential suspension is not for chicken back and chicken neck. That's another thing that people have to understand. We're talking about leg quarters. And so there are a lot of distinctions in this discussion which will call for us to continue to speak about the most important thing, building up Jamaica's capacity to produce for itself. I'm willing to listen to all of the considerations from the broilers, from the opposition, from our farmers, from everybody. The bottom line is that after we have those discussions, we need to come out of that room as Jamaicans with an outcome that protects Jamaica. The broiler companies are part of my interest. The small farmers are part of my interest. I represent all of them as minister. Nothing is wrong with me putting on the table for discussion in the public domain the options that are available to me. I'm sending a very clear message. This minister will not hesitate in using whatever authority within the law to do what I have to do. We are looking on, for instance, transshipment charges for freight rising in excess of 300%. That's madness. You know, in some cases it has moved from 3,000 US to over 11,000 US. We understand the impact of that in terms of price and availability of the products like the chicken feet, like the chicken necks, like the turkey necks, and fluctuations also in fuel have to be considered. All of that has created a perfect storm.
Moving Chang, and this is not the remedy to Jamaica's crime problem, says Professor Blake. Associate Professor of Political Science, Dr. Damian Blake, says removing the Minister of National Security and the Commissioner of Police will not solve Jamaica's crime problem. During a People's National Party media briefing, opposition leader Mark Golding issued a 60-day ultimatum to Commissioner of Police Major General Anthony Anderson to quit his job or find a new strategy apart from states of emergency to fight crime.
If the Commissioner cannot find another strategic approach to getting the crime problem under control within the next 60 days, I think he must call it a day as well and allow someone else to take up the mantle of Commissioner.
That was the ultimatum given by opposition leader Mark Golding to the Commissioner of Police Major General Anthony Anderson in response to Jamaica's surge in crime and violence. However, Dr. Blake, who has done extensive research in Jamaica's culture of gangs, crime and violence, says removing the Commissioner of Police is not the solution. Instead, he says it requires the use of short and long-term measures.
Removing the Minister or the Commissioner of Police really won't solve the mammoth problem that we have with crime and violence in Jamaica. It requires a more short-term and long-term kinds of changes around the ways in which we engage with policing, right? The ways in which we use SOEs and the zones, for example. There certainly needs to be legislative changes.
Dr. Blake told Nationwide this morning that legislative change is an important route that must be taken to curb crime. He noted that the current sanctions against criminals are too lenient.
So men go in, they do very little time, and they're back on the road again. So we have to change that, the Bail Act, those sorts of things. So it's policing kinds of change that we need, is legislative changes. There's also political changes, right? That we need to have once and for all, I think, a bipartisan type of national security ministry or entity within the ministry that has the parliamentarian buy-in from both political parties. This division among the political parties over the issue of security, crime and violence, that simply has to stop.
According to the Jamaica Constabulary Force's website, 111 murders were recorded between January 1 and January 22, 2022.
The OUR said it has not been able to complete its investigations as JPS has not complied with a request for data and other information that's critical to the OUR's examination of the issues. Therefore, additional time is required for the OUR to complete the investigation and publish its findings. The OUR has instructed JPS to maintain the suspension of its Transformer Protection Program pilot project that curtailed electricity service in affected communities. It's also prohibited from taking similar actions in any other community across the island, as outlined in the first directive issued to the JPS on October 15 last year. The OUR's decision to first issue a cease and desist order followed consumer complaints since July 2021 about prolonged power outages in several communities, with reports of many occurring daily. The OUR wrote to JPS requesting information as part of its investigation into the complaints. On October 4, 2021, JPS responded apprising the OUR for the first time of implementation of its Transformer Protection Program pilot project. The response also gave an indication of the nature and extent of the curtailment of service that significantly affected JPS's paying customers in approximately 88 communities. The information suggested that the outages were more widespread in sections of St. Catherine, Kingston and St. Andrew South, Kingston and St. Andrew North, Kingston and St. Andrew North, Clarendon and St. James. The OUR is against all forms of electricity theft, which affects the provision of economical and adequate electricity services. The OUR is also mindful of JPS's obligations to take steps to ensure the reliability, adequacy, safety, and efficiency of the service that is provided to the public. The OUR has not approved any policy or measure that would see the use of outages imposed on legitimate customers as a means of controlling electricity losses.
Integrity Commission accuses former PNP administration of breaches in granting Moon Palace work permits. The Integrity Commission has accused the Ministry of Labour under the then Portia Simsimila administration of breaches in granting of work permits to foreign nationals. This in relation to the 2014 and 2015 granting of work permits for the construction work on Moon Palace Jamaica Grand Hotel project. In a report tabled in Parliament, the Commission's Director of Investigations concluded that the Ministry of Labour and Social Security breached Parts 1 and 2 of its internal administrative guidelines. These specifically required an applicant and/or their prospective employer to submit employer and employee details as part of their application before being issued with a work permit.
On March 16, 2015, the then Office of the Contractor General initiated a probe into the matter, which was later concluded by the Integrity Commission. The report says that the process that led to the issuance of work permits to foreign nationals during the period was irregular and lacked transparency. According to the Director, Permanent Secretary Colette Roberts-Risdon said she was unable to provide the documentation owing to file damage caused by flooding in 2020. However, it was noted that the then Contractor General said his requests for said documents were not satisfied before the flooding. The Integrity Commission report also says it calls into question the legitimacy and credibility of the applications for the work permits that were granted to foreign nationals for the 6 months between August 2014 and February 2015. In its recommendations, the report urged the Permanent Secretary to undertake a review of the Ministry's internal administrative guidelines that govern the processing of work permit applications. The report also urged Roberts-Risdon to implement the necessary oversight mechanisms to ensure compliance with the established internal guidelines and policies of the Ministry. The investigation was triggered after media articles questioned the need for the foreign nationals to be granted the permits to undertake work it was felt could be done by Jamaicans.
Mandatory minimum sentence of in excess of 10 years being contemplated for illegal possession of firearm. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has revealed that coming legislative amendments will see the government imposing a mandatory minimum custodial sentence in excess of 10 years for people found guilty of illegal possession of firearm.
According to the Jamaica Constabulary Force JCF's crime statistics, approximately 67 shootings have occurred since the start of 2022. There were also 111 murders recorded during the first 22 days, indicating a 19% increase compared to the same period last year. Prime Minister Holness reiterated his personal exaggerated view that punishment for those found in possession of illegal firearms should begin at the death penalty.
In terms of the sentence being contemplated for possession of an illegal firearm, Prime Minister, where the weapon in question is not licensed, I heard you say you are contemplating tougher measures. How tough is tough? How many years?
Well, I'm on record as saying, were it up to me, they would get the death penalty. But, of course, I think that is the greatest deterrent for the possession of an illegal firearm. But there is a contemplation for a minimum mandatory in excess of 10 years. But I'm not going to say what the actual thing is until the legislation gets to Parliament.
Prime Minister Holness says legal firearm holders will not be jeopardized by the legislation.
We will be coming to Parliament after a long debate with new, tougher legislation, new, tougher penalties for the possession of illegal firearms. There is a sense in Jamaica that any new, tougher legislation is going to unfairly impact legal firearm holders. This legislation is not designed for legal firearm holders. We are focusing on the illegal possession, trade, and use of weapons in the country.
The Prime Minister noted that amendments to the Bail Act will also be put into consideration.
We are now in the budget process. We may have to figure out a way how to get it done whilst the budget is going on, but it is urgent and important, and we'll have it done. The second one is to plug the loopholes in the Bail Act. We have to have a new Bail Act, and that will be coming to the Parliament. So we will be able to address the issue of the easy access and use of illegal firearms and criminals rotating through the criminal justice system and committing crimes again.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Holness says the government will re-engage the opposition in 1 week concerning the re-implementation of states of public emergency.
We have to engage the opposition to get their support for a new state of public emergency. That has to happen.
How soon do you plan to engage the opposition?
We will be engaging them again within, I would say, another week or so.
Please remember to subscribe, like, share, and click the notification bell for daily updates.